On today's program, I talk about the two parts of us that are in conflict, one that wants change and the one that resists change. How do we negotiate the situation to get the result we're after? Hi there, and thanks for joining me on today's episode. And today I wanted just to share some of the things I've been doing, and it'll kind of translate into something I think would be kind of useful for you. And it was just about the product I'm releasing, which is about helping people quit smoking. But it was what came to me about this was about how to explain the parts of you which can be in conflict. And this is where kind of the quit smoking kind of came from, really. It's about how do we explain that we are smoking, yet we don't want to. How do we have these two parts of us that are kind of coexisting, but clearly not communicating? It's quite a universal problem that we can find when we've got something we want to do, but there's a part that stops us doing it, or inhibits us, or procrastinates in some way. And you've got these two parts at war. And often what happens is that the part that wins is the kind of the emotional side, the one that's kind of coming from the internal. I think you probably notice this when you're having big decisions to be made. We often go with our gut, with our feelings, how we are feeling inside about something, rather than trusting or working forward with that part of our brain that says, no, this is okay, this is what you want to do, just do it. So you can probably find examples in your own personal history which relate to this. And I find clients which aren't smoking related, but about making decisions. And it's about how do we kind of talk to these two parts. And I think first off, it's about recognizing they exist, and that we have a part that absolutely 100% wants to commit to the change that they want to see, whatever it may be. And the other part, which we find often a little bit more deeper within inside ourselves, doesn't want to, or wants to continue the other behavior, which is probably a little bit more accurate. It wants to continue with the other behavior that it's used to, and the one it's always done, which can be to procrastinate, to put things in our way, to create obstacles, to inhibit the progress that the other half wants to. So when we talk about how we're going to work through this, it's about identifying and accepting and respecting we have this conflict. We have these two parts pulling away from each other. And we need to, when we have the conversations about change, we recognize that we want to go in a certain direction. That's a reason that you're talking to me, because you've got this change you want to action on, yet there's a resistance. So all the work that ever happens, this particularly happens within decision making, including smoking, is actually acknowledge this part that wants to continue the old pattern. And a lot of therapies can deal with simply trying to shut down that part, and it can be that when we try and ignore that and focus on the kind of the more aware, more conscious minded, that's my direction, that's my goal. And that can work, and as much as you're pushing someone through a particular state. But in my line of work, it's a lot more convivial, a lot nicer to actually bring that part that has wanting the old pattern, the old behavior to remain, and actually mold them around to acknowledge actually what they're after can be achieved in a new, different way. So when we have sessions, when it's dealing with challenges which we can't overcome because we're feeling this kind of tug of war, this conflict, it's always about having a conversation with that part that wants to remain in the previous behavior, the one that, even if it's not great, even if it's really serving us, we still recognize that it has, that part has a particular intention, and recognize what the intention is. So if you see that the behavior is to carry on resisting the change that you desire, we need to work out, well, what's happening with that part? What's happening with that behavior? What's actually kind of like behind the scenes? And once we understand that, and once we can communicate with it in a very conversational way, we can align it, bring it into the other part that does want to progress and wants to want to move forward. It has a conversation where it's now congruent. They come together. Both parts can say, yes, we are now aligned to this. We'll take responsibility for it. So what can I give you from this? And I think it's just to be aware that you can have these two parts existing at the same time and interfering with each other. But how we get past that is by recognizing that this part has behind it some intention, some reason behind it. And if we can get to the reason, well, then we can create change. We can then start making it more conducive and match what our other goals are. And behavior and intention are critical in this kind of therapy. And back to previous videos, just to kind of make it even clearer, the part that is very clear about the goals and the desires, the change thereafter, is very much the conscious mind. Whereas the parts which are doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, ones which you feel very deeply internally, and the emotions and the feelings that prevent us going in that direction, is more of the unconscious mind, the part behind the scenes. It's using some old history to rely on, some old pattern that it needs to maintain. So we have to get behind that. Pull the curtains, like Wizard of Oz, get behind that and actually see what's going on. Try and understand what's happening and then bring it around so it understands that we can still meet the intention but through a different behavior. And that, back to the original point, is all that's happening through the quit smoking sessions. We're looking just to maneuver around that behavior and adapt it to the new circumstance, the new need. And once we have that, well, the change is immediate. So accept you can have these 2 points working at the same time. When you begin to accept you can have these 2 points, this conflict going on, well, then the acknowledgement and the acceptance can be, like I mentioned in the past, that beginning step of your own personal therapy to find alternatives. Awareness of the situation, really staring at it, is a massive way to actually initiate change. So I invite you to do that. When you've got a decision coming up, recognize and acknowledge there's a part that wants to do these things that you're after, and then there's a part that says, actually, I want to maintain old behavior and old pattern. And just by awareness and acknowledgement, just see and notice what kind of change may occur just from that. Sometimes it can be all that you need. But as always, if there's any questions or comments, please leave them and I'll reply to every single one of them. But other than that, have a fantastic day wherever you are.